All right, awesome. So we are now live. So Giles, thank you so much for joining. How are you?
I'm very well, Charlotte. Apologies for being a few minutes late. I had a bit of problems with the technology, but here,
Technical support, always the issue, hey?
yeah, I'm very lucky. I've got very good technical support of my wife.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. So, look, I'm pleased to have you today because I know we spoke about this a little bit before, and I was keen to kind of get you on it and to discuss it more. But obviously, it's been a very challenging year, challenging market. It's still a challenging market. We've actually got some news this week of a couple of people we know who own companies that are now unfortunately kind of going into liquidation and things like that. So it's real tough times, and I'm just super keen to get your thoughts. Obviously, you've seen a lot of markets, ups and downs. Like, what's kind of your take on things at the moment?
Yeah, it's a really interesting and challenging market. And in my sort of nearly 40 years in the recruitment industry, I don't think I've seen one quite as challenging as the one we're in now.
Interesting.
Um, I mean, obviously we had COVID.
Yeah.
The year after COVID, people came out, and most recruitment businesses were very successful, made a lot of money, probably hired a lot of people. And then some people may say we've reverted to norm, or I actually think it's not quite norm, but it's a very tough market at the moment. And I think my view is for people running in businesses in this sort of economic climate, you've really got to be on top of your cost base. You have got to look at your headcount. I'm afraid it is a time where, unfortunately, you may well have to be trimming your headcount to a manageable size. The advice I'd give to people on that is if you have got to do that, try and do it in one go.
Yeah.
I may be able to say this, if not, tell me, but it may be too late. There's a saying, if you're going to eat a shit sandwich, eat it in one go.
Yeah. And actually, Andy, I know my business partner, he always says, you don't want to do death by a thousand cuts.
Correct.
That's the thing. You don't want to just keep cutting. It's so demoralizing for everyone.
That's the key thing. I think you've got to make the tough decisions, act on it, and then all being well, you don't have to go back. So you can then commit to the staff that you have got. It's then about making them feel special, supporting them. I think sometimes people make the fatal error in this market. All they seem to talk to their staff about is how much money they're making. Well, in a tough market, that can be very demoralizing.
Yeah.
So it's actually talking to them about activity, but it's not necessarily how many pounds you're making, dollars or euros. You can look at other forms of activity. And I think that's really important. But I think once you've trimmed down, it is then really important to galvanize the staff and the teams that you have left to motivate them and actually show your commitment to them.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this week for me has been a really, I suppose, a week of almost sort of two ends, because I had, as a reference before, a couple of companies that we know that unfortunately have got to the position that they're at now. Then I've spoken to other companies that, maybe in that post-COVID sort of boom, they didn't kind of go crazy. They were steady. And in fact, now actually they're steadying the ship a lot better, and they're still actually continuing to grow little bits, looking to hire a little bit strategically and stuff. So it was kind of interesting. I had this conversation with one company who's just expanded out to the US market as well, and they're like, thankfully from previous decisions that they've made, which maybe they were regretful at the time that they didn't go more, they didn't hire more. Actually, it's really working in their favor right now.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with you. Um, I think those that have probably still been cautious on hiring have probably not had to let people go.
Mm.
Those that probably hired a lot of people as we came out of COVID are the ones that have had to let people go.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was just, and I totally understand why, because of course it was a big boom, like big boom, like it went shoom, right up. So everyone wanted to capitalize on it. But unfortunately, it's kind of tailed down the other end, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. And I think the other thing was because, dare I say it, there was a bit of a war for talent then.
Yeah.
Some got inflated. So people were hiring consultants and probably paying, well, as they will have discovered, above what they should have been paying.
Yeah.
And they've been stuck with some expensive people who are not really justifying their salaries.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I'm keen to know because obviously the UK market's been real tough, like super, super tough. Like, what have you been seeing with some of the clients that you work with that are maybe playing in some of the other sort of geographical locations? Like, have they equally kind of hit as hard, or is the diversification kind of helped?
No, I think if you look at the sort of global recruitment market, there are very few markets that are doing well. And I think, interestingly, 3 of the major recruitment PLCs came out with results in the last sort of 3 or 4 days. Australia has definitely been hit extremely hard, as have other parts of Asia. I think the one market in Asia that is doing well, if I dare say it, is still Japan.
Okay.
But they are quite unique in the demographic issues they've got there.
Yeah.
But I think if you were to look at the larger organisations, Walters, Page, Hayes, they are down everywhere in the world. There is not one market where they would all say, yeah, we're really happy, things are fantastic.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, in Australia, we do quite a lot of recruitment in Australia, moving sort of UK and Irish recruiters across. We're still making placements there, but so many of the start dates for those, as it often is anyway with international movers, but is February, March, April. So it's interesting to see that the companies there who have said that it is very hard, they are still kind of pre-planning though. They are trying to like take talent where they can, and if timelines allow, try and schedule it for that almost like Q2 next year. So how, like, when do we think this is going to turn a bit? And how do you judge that?
I was going to say, I wish I had a crystal ball for that.
I know.
I think a lot of people are thinking, well, this year is not going to be, we're not going to see any improvement. I think people are hoping that there will be some sort of improvement really by the end of the second quarter next year. So that may fit with what you're saying and what some of your clients are doing out there. But I think that we've got the US election coming up, so that will affect that. Nothing will really flow through till the end of the year. I mean, the other interesting thing, which I think a lot of recruitment companies are watching very closely at the moment, is what will happen in the budget.
Yeah.
Because there could be some very interesting changes with regard to employment law issues and all of that. But I was speaking to somebody today, I think they were saying there are potentially 28 points on that. But actually, there's not much meat on it as yet. So these things are not likely to come in probably until, somebody was saying to me earlier today, October 2026.
Ooh, interesting.
But certainly what I'm seeing actively and been talking to certainly one business today, there is a huge demand for contract.
Yes, there is.
Rather than perm. Having said that, there are 1 or 2 who are saying that people are actually trying to get perm deals done now before the new legislation comes in.
Yeah. It's interesting you say about contract, because contract is always tricky, because in a harder market, people always want contract. Of course they do, and they want to be doubling down on that. But to try and get good contract talent in a hard market is very challenging, because of course, if you have an excellent contract runner book, like, why are you going to risk it and leave it? You know, so it's then all of a sudden, as you said, that war on talent for contract in particular, it becomes even tighter in a hard market, because you want to attract the best people, but of course the best people aren't going to leave unless there's a very good reason.
Absolutely right. And I think at the moment, good people, whether they're in perm recruitment or contract, are sitting tight. People aren't moving.
Yeah.
Why do leave an organisation when you've got contractors, or you've got a good set of clients that you're not servicing in quite the way that you might like, but at least you have relationships with them. And so you may be recruiting, you've got a chance of working on that job.
Yeah, it's interesting. The only time where we're kind of seeing that there is still potential movement of that, like really, really top tier talent, is when it's kind of new and exciting opportunities that maybe they're seeing a little bit of a dip in the market that they've been in, they've maybe toyed with the idea, like, would I go join someone and set up a division or do something? They're now seeing that as a potential opportunity. Well, because I'm being impacted anyway, is now not the time to maybe go and try that? And they've had obviously their previous experience and the money that comes with it to give them a bit of buffer to explore those things. But again, needs to be an attractive proposition and everything like that, and it only suits certain people. But that's kind of the space I see at the moment.
Yeah, but I think a lot of organizations are not entering into new disciplines or new markets at the moment. They
Not
are
much.
on what they've got and where they are. You know, it's a big investment to go and open an office in the US or wherever it might be. Perhaps we ought to wait, and let's make sure our base where we are, be it in the UK or in continental Europe, is solid, is performing, and is profitable.
It is interesting that I am seeing here in the UK, but also in Australia, real strong demand, obviously, in that renewable energy clean tech space. So even in Australia, even though the market is very, very challenging, we have one candidate, for example, has 6 offers at the moment because they are very sort of specialist in that renewable energy space. Same as here in the UK, quite a few clients that I've spoken to that have had that on their plan as potential diversification to work the US market from the UK. They are still being opportunistic if they find the right people in that sort of space.
Yes, I think there are pockets, and I think that renewable energy space is definitely one where there is a demand.
Yeah.
That's particularly important. So if you're in that market, you'll be doing well. And obviously, people want to sometimes try and follow the money, so they think, well, I'll get into that. I mean, my advice to that is, make sure you've done your research thoroughly. Make sure that you know that you could afford to carry a loss-making business for a period of time.
Yeah.
And of course, like anything, it's all about hiring or having the right person to do the job.
Yeah, completely. That can make or break it. It really can, especially when launching something new, you know. I wanted to come back to the piece that you mentioned around sort of the cash flow piece, because I think this is obviously impacting a lot of people because they are looking obviously at their cost base. They're obviously looking at, what they've got coming in the door and deals taking longer and cycles. And I know I spoke to you briefly about this before. I felt like, and I probably still feel a little bit like that with some of the companies that I know, there's a slight sort of chicken and egg scenario in the sense of like, they're trying to hold on to people as long as they can in the hopes that it is going to sort of turn a bit, Q2 next year.
Yeah.
But at the same point, they don't necessarily want to bleed cash. So they're kind of in this kind of like, do I let him go and then have to start on the back foot once everything picks up again? Or do I hold fire, but I bleed cash and then I have that impact next year? It's kind of a hard positioning.
It's a very hard positioning, and it is trying to get the right balance. I mean, I've always believed you need to cut back, but you don't want to cut into the bone.
Yeah.
'Cause once you do that, you may well miss the uptick, and then
Yeah.
everybody will be hiring. But at the end of the day, you have to look at your own financial situation as an organization or an individual. And if it meant that you do have to, unfortunately, maybe make 2 or 3 people redundant now, because that's going to save you £50,000 between now and the end of the year, and you're not sure about it, maybe that's what you do. And you then have to if you have to come back into the market next year, then so be it.
Yeah.
I think, it depends on people's the relationship with their bank managers. I mean, I think on that, one of the interesting things at the moment is where people are looking at cash is if we are going to see an increase, and I firmly believe we will, in demand for contractors.
Yeah.
They're going to affect people's cash flow.
Yes, of course.
You'll certainly find clients will be looking very closely at people's balance sheets because they don't want to enter working with an organization who they feel might not be able to pay their temps.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I suppose having that real solid infrastructure on the back end and having that set up is going to be more important than ever, really.
I think it will be, because I think temp books and those organizations that do have temp books and will see those grow. But of course, as you know, you don't get paid immediately.
I know, which is hard. And for that, because I speak to a lot of people that obviously are maybe predominantly perm heavy and they've dabbled with temp or they've thought about it or they've done a little bit, like they are going to be looking to grow that out. Like, what's kind of some of your tips and tricks do you think about sort of really, I suppose, investing and growing out a contract book?
I think one thing is people forget contract and perm are very different.
Mm,
In terms of the recruitment process. Contract is so much faster.
yeah.
Perm is a lot more about consultative,
Yeah.
somebody's career. Quite a lot of contract work is that they want a job now. Now, I do know there are professional contractors out there, I'll continue to look for things to develop their career or gain further information or enhance their skill set, be it in a different technology or whatever it might be. But I think it is good perm recruiters don't always make good contract recruiters, and
Yeah.
good contract recruiters don't always make good perm recruiters.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And actually, I know a few companies that still operate the dual desk and stuff like that. And that's really challenging. And I don't think I've ever come across someone that's done a dual desk, and people on LinkedIn can correct me if I'm wrong, where they've had an equal split. They always end up tending to be one or the other still, you know?
No, I agree with you. And I've always, in my sort of stuff, I'm not a fan of dual desks.
Yeah.
You are either a contract recruiter doing that or you're a perm recruiter.
Yeah. So just, I mean, obviously over your time, as you said, like 40 years in recruitment, when you've been in these situations before, what are the things that you look at straight away when things start getting tight? You start noticing obviously that that's impacting sort of balance sheets and stuff. Like, what do you kind of sit down and go, right, we need to look at this, we need to review, these are the decisions. Like, what does that look like?
I mean, activity is a great one. You can have a look at a trend for the number of live jobs.
Mm-hmm.
The time to hire is another real clue, and you tend to find companies are coming back and saying, "Yeah, no, we really like her, but have you got anybody else?" So
Okay.
they take time to make decisions. But I mean, it's to me, it's very simple. It's just look at the basic activity, the number of jobs, how clients are prepared to deal with you. The other big thing, which a lot of people forget, in markets like this, candidates don't move jobs.
Yeah.
They're concerned. So if you've been with an organization 2 or 3 years, even though you might be wanting to move, you're going to think, actually, no, I can't get on with my boss. I'm all right here. I'm just going to wait.
Mm.
The recruitment industry thrives on confidence in the market, and it's
Yeah.
confidence about candidates moving jobs. It's not about companies saying, I just need to hire a new person.
Yeah. This is it. And I think that's totally right, because even if you are seeing jobs and you're seeing that, it's about getting candidates that will feel comfortable to actually make that move as well.
Yes, I mean, one of the things that I did or was involved with was very much in the recession of 1990. And we looked at every business unit and every location, and we had a traffic light system:
Wow.
amber, green.
Yeah.
Green were okay, amber was at a question mark, and red was, well, we need to take out or we need to move out of that.
And I want to go back to this thing about, not cutting to the bone, but at the same point, we're not doing this kind of death by a thousand cuts. Like, how do you get that estimation right? Do you get what I mean? Like,
I do. I think a lot of it depends on team size, because I believe, say, you're going to have a marketing team, you can't really function with a team of less than 3 people.
okay.
So if you believe the market's strong enough to have a minimum of 3 people, you can do that. But if you actually think, and we did come out of a couple of things because we just felt in the market or what we were doing at the time, we could only have a team of 2.
Mm.
Okay, we'll not do that. But what we will concentrate is on finance, where we've got a team of 5 and we're good and we're known.
Okay. Right. Because I think that's the thing as well, is I sometimes see people when they do make that decision, they sometimes go the other way in an extremity. So they kind of go, right, well, we're just going to boom, 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 get rid. And then, of course, there is so many other implications, not just the fact that you have to rebuild, obviously, when there is the uptick, but it's also then the confidence in the business. because of course attracting talent, even clients and things like that, when you've made such, I suppose, extreme decisions, that's hard to then refocus that reputation.
Yes, but the other thing I'd suggest people ought to look at is if you're suddenly thinking, well, we're going to pull out of technology marketing or whatever it is, but we've got two really good people in there. Can we redeploy them? Can we put them into something else?
Yeah.
So it actually keeps people as well, which I think is quite good for morale.
Yeah, definitely. And on that morale piece, to explore that a bit further, like, Dilta, he did a video, I think he put out on LinkedIn earlier today about how important like that resilience and that motivation is in a market like this, because it can be really hard to go through the motions and things take long and you don't see the return. So, how do you instill that in the people that you keep to just keep going and keep going?
One of the things that we did, and I have to say, it was one of the great things that Rob did, but back in the first recession, we used to say to all our consultants, we expect you to go out more with clients and candidates now,
Yeah.
because clients have got time, and
Yeah.
actually where you go out with them, because some of them are probably worried about their job, and they don't expect to be taken out. You don't have to go out and have a lavish lunch. You can go and have a coffee. You can go and have a beer, but it's
Yeah.
actually keeping relationships going. And actually, that also says to your people, God, these guys are committed.
Yeah. True, I suppose,
One
actually.
of the big mistakes a lot of companies make is they immediately say, right, you can't go out and take a client out for a lunch or a beer.
Yeah.
Stopped. Whereas we'd go the other way. We'd say, okay, go and do it.
Yeah. So it's more focusing and doubling down even more on that consultative approach. So
Yeah,
that kind of like, okay, none of this transactional relationship, like let's have a chat about how things are and taking that longer term perspective.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I think that's the hardest thing I find as well, is speaking to recruiters in the market, is maintaining that motivation, that sort of, determination to just keep going when things are taking longer. It's hard.
Yeah, we didn't stop taking people out. Our own employees, we didn't stop incentives that we had.
Yeah.
Obviously, there will be fewer going on them, but it
Yeah.
was important to maintain that. We never cancelled a Christmas party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it might have been a very different type of party than some of the others, but it still happened. And actually, staff appreciated that.
Yeah. I suppose as well, coming back to what you said about recognizing the trends and activities, this is going to be an even more important time for people. And I know I harp on about it all the time when I do my tech stack work, understanding the importance of data and also knowing your data and having access to data, because it's very hard in markets like this to make objective decisions if you don't have that.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, but that to me, that's what the day job of somebody running a recruitment business is. You need to know what's going on in the market, and it's very apparent the number of live jobs we're working on, the activities, how many interviews, all the sort of basic things that have never changed.
Yeah. And it's something like I always talk about when I speak to people, because you want to remove that element of subjectivity. You want to be able to have that baseline activity that you can review, because also that's where you recognize pockets of success or pockets of, improvement and things like that. And unless you have that real objective, clear cut view, it's kind of the finger in the air type thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. But it's like you were saying earlier, there are pockets that are still doing well. There are people still hiring in certain areas. Now, what are those areas?
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I was saying, because even a recruiter today, interestingly enough, when we first started working with them, they're going over to Australia. They were like, "Oh, I absolutely want to secure a role before I go. I need to have good security." But this is the renewable energy one that I spoke about. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I've got like these 6 offers. So actually, I want to pause and I want to wait and meet everyone when I get there face to face." Now, any other discipline area, tech, anything like that, the candidate will want an offer and they want to take it and they want to have it. So there are these little areas, that you can. Oh, you went, oh,
Hi, Charlotte, what's happened?
You went black for a minute, but we've got you back. Can you hear me?
Charlotte?
Yeah?
Charlotte?
Yes? Have you got me back?
Hmm.
Hang on. Can you hear? Well, look, we're going to wrap.
Charlotte?
Yes. Have you got me? Hang on. Right, I'm going to mute Giles for the minute. So look, we're obviously having some technical issues on that. But thank you very much, Giles. That was super interesting to find out. I am going to message you afterwards. We'll pick up and everything like that. But that was really, really interesting. I think the biggest thing that people need to focus on is that bottom line, as you mentioned. So really that sort of cash element, predicting for the future, looking like that it's probably going to be more Q2 next year and kind of budgeting to that. But yeah, some interesting takeaways. So look, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We're going to go. So I'll call you after.
Charlotte, I don't know if you can hear me, but it looks as though I can see you, but can't hear you.
I can hear you. I'll call you later.